So just about me, I'm an elementary and special education major. I am currently student teaching this semester at Shoemaker Elementary in Grand Island, Nebraska. Since I'm the double major, my first half of my practicum or my student teaching has been in a fifth grade classroom, and now I am in a special education classroom, and they have both been at Shoemaker. So the theme that I chose was structured learning environments. I chose this theme because it was something that I really wasn't aware of before getting into teaching, so I wanted to show the growth that I had in that area. So my first guiding question that I have is, what is the relationship between classroom structures and student learning, and what strategies can I use to help my students be engaged? So the competency statement that I did is, I am competent at applying classroom management strategies to increase appropriate student behavior. So just my first artifact will be a journal entry from my practicum my sophomore year, and it'll be showing where I first started learning about structured learning environments and a strategy that I was able to observe in the class I was in. My second artifact will be an image of a graph, which is from my practicum my junior year, and it'll show how I was able to start implementing a strategy to increase a power for one of the students. And then my third artifact is going to be an image of flexible seating from my student teaching experience when I was in the fifth grade classroom. And it'll be showing how I was able to apply what I learned about structured learning environments. So my first artifact is a journal entry, and I wrote this journal entry when I was at my practicum in a first grade class at Hill Elementary in Lincoln. So in the journal, I just talk about how I was able to observe a new strategy that I'd never used. They were called Hill Hawk tickets, and my teacher used them to positively praise students for either being responsible, respectful, or safe, just showing any of those good behaviors. And I was able to see how it really motivated the students, because after seeing them getting that piece of paper with their name on it, they got really excited and they could see that they were doing something good. So I at first just observed my CT using them, and then I was able to use them myself. And at first I wasn't very comfortable with it because I thought maybe there was a certain number I needed to give out a day or certain behaviors that I needed to look for. But after getting more experience using them and talking to my CT, I could see that it wasn't the number of tickets that I gave out, but it was more looking for those behaviors that I wanted the students to continue and just reinforcing them in that way. My second artifact is an image of a graph. So this photo is of a graph that I made when I was implementing a behavior management plan for one of the students in my practicum when I was in a kindergarten class at Roper Elementary in Lincoln. For this assignment, I had to choose a student and find a positive behavior that I wanted to see them increase. So the behavior I chose was hand raising. So in the graph, you can see the first half is how many times the student had raised his hand before I really implemented the plan. And then the second half, you can see he started to increase, and it was after I started using reinforcement. And reinforcement was something that was really important to this plan. And at first, I just thought I could use anything to reinforce him. I didn't really think it'd matter, but I quickly found out that you need to find something that interests him, something that'll push him to want to raise his hand more so that he can get that reward. And once I found that reinforcement that really interested him, his hand raising increased and he started participating more in class. And then my last artifact is an image of flexible seating. And so these photos were taken of the fifth grade that I was in for my first half of student teaching at Shoemaker Elementary in Grand Island. So just by looking at these pictures, you can see some different forms of flexible seating that we were able to offer to the students. And this was something that was new to my CT. She had never used it before, and I had only seen it a couple times, but I really wasn't familiar with it. So I really got to see how flexible seating was run, and how you have to get the students prepared to use it. At first, I didn't really know how well it would work because I just figured the kids would just see it as a toy instead of as a learning strategy. But after the students really got used to it, you could tell that it was really helping them, those students that needed it, to really be focused and stay on task during our lessons. So after a while, I was able to implement the flexible seating on my own, and I was able to do that by looking and kind of manipulating what flexible seating what students got, because after a while I could tell what really worked for a student. Like, for instance, a standing desk might work better for a student that wants to be moving around more than a seat on the floor, because there's more room to move around. So my synthesis, or my big ideas, my first is implementing classroom management strategies will help students be engaged in their learning. So by using these strategies, you're helping your students and giving them those tools they need to work well in the classroom. And then finding the strategy that works best for each of your students is important, because not every strategy is going to work for all of your students. You really need to know that student and know what's going to work for them. My reflection, so what have I learned? In order to help your students be successful, you need to know how they learn best, and not every strategy you will use for each of your not every strategy you use will work for each of your students. You need to find the one that fits each of their needs and the personalities. These two things that I learned really go hand in hand, because to find that strategies that works for that student, you really need to know that student. You need to know how they learn, what interests them, and what will really push them to want to work harder. And then how can I continue to grow? I can keep track of my students' progress based on the strategies being used. By doing this, I can see what strategies are working and what aren't, and how I either need to revise or if I need to find a different strategy to use. And then I can continue to learn different strategies that I can implement in my classroom, because I've gotten the opportunity to learn some throughout my experiences, but I know that there's many more that would be beneficial for me to be able to use in my classroom. Future, my short-term goal, I will be teaching first grade at Shoemaker Elementary, where I am currently, starting in January. And when I start my job, I will do my best to take advantage of as many opportunities that I can that will help me improve my teaching. This will include power hours, workshops, and collaborating with my mentor and teaching partners. And then my long-term goal is I'm hoping to continue teaching in the Grand Island area, and I'm also hoping to begin my master's within the first couple of years of teaching, so that I can continue to grow as an educator. And just to recap, I showed my growth from my artifacts. First, from my journal entry, I showed how I was starting to learn why structured learning environments are important aspects in a classroom. Then I showed my second artifact, which was an image of a graph, which showed how I was able to implement a strategy and start to understand the importance of knowing how to use it to improve the student's positive behavior. And then my last artifact was the image of flexible seating, and I showed how I was able to use a new strategy to best help the students to be engaged in the classroom. So by doing this, I was able to prove my competency that I'm competent in applying classroom management strategies to increase appropriate student behavior. And thank you for listening. Do you have any questions?
So you froze up a bit, but we could see your presentation, so no worries. But okay. Just you were frozen in time. Okay, so we had a couple questions. The picture that had the 3 different seating.
Yes.
The third one, is it on blocks? Is it make the desk taller?
Yes, they're standing desks. So we kind of changed them since it was 5th grade, so we have some students that were a lot shorter than the others. So we just had a different variety so that the different heights of students would work for each of them.
Does it hold them so the students can't knock it off easily, or does like the leg fit in a bit so it makes it sturdy?
It's not that sturdy, no. There's probably better ways because it was also really hard to move the desks once you got them. If you didn't like it in that area, you couldn't just slide it with them. So there's definitely a better way, but no, that's just what we had for that time.
Okay, see, somebody needs to invent that, go on Shark Tank and sell it.
There you go.
There you go. Okay, we also were curious, what are power hours?
So power hours are something at least my school does. So it's where they really focus on one certain aspect that you could grow on. So like one that I'm going to go to coming up is going to be focusing on phonetics, where we're just going to be focusing on how to teach those to students and what to have them focus on when they're working with them.
Oh, so there's different topics and then you can choose which one you'd like to go to?
Yes. Actually, for our contract, we're supposed to be going to, I think it's I don't know if it's a semester or a year, but yeah, just to keep learning, so.
Interesting. Okay, do you have questions?
Yeah, one quick question back to the idea of the different flexible seating options. I was just curious, beyond just the student's choice, what purposes for the various seating options would those be used for? In which settings, environments? Whole group independent, whole group, small group independent?
Well, actually, so what we did was the student got to pick the seating. They had that the entire day. So sometimes it was a little hard with small groups because when students have different levels of where they're sitting, it was hard for them to really collaborate. So I thought it was really good in whole group because all the students could kind of be wherever they were that fit them the best, but they were still getting the direct instruction from me.
That makes sense. And then maybe also for independent work time, they had some choice there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.